All right, good morning to everyone. My name is Jane. I'm with the Alliance of Angels. Welcome to our webinar this morning, which we're co-hosting with our partner Brex. It's about using data to delight customers. And we are delighted to have Swetha from Brex to come share her thoughts and analysis with us. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage everyone, if you are not speaking, right, please put yourself on mute so we can all have a quiet, pleasant experience, and we can all learn effectively together. That said, if you have any questions that you would like to ask our speakers or ask questions about Brex, the service, feel free to chime up. This is an ordinary Zoom meeting. Anyone can speak up, anyone can share video. So feel free to jump in and participate. We look forward to have an interactive session. Right. Before we go in, I'd like to say a few words about my organization, Alliance of Angels. We're an angel group here in Seattle. Every year we put about 10 million into 20 companies. Most companies that are fundraising from us, they're looking for a total between $500,000 and 1.5. And our typical check size is 250 to 500. We're a sector agnostic investor, also a stage agnostic investor. The hard filter is that we focus on companies headquartered in the Pacific Northwest. Right. And some folks may wonder, given the current situation, the public health situation, is any investing happening? But the reality is that there's been a very, very high pace of activity on the fundraising side. There's really not been much slowdown. And so if you are interested in fundraising, learning more about my organization, feel free to reach out. My email is at the bottom right here. And happy to learn more about what you're building and explore how we can help. And with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to hand the meeting over to Swetha from Brex, and she's going to share a little more about her organization and move ahead into our session. Please go ahead.
Awesome, cool. Thank you so much for the intro. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Let me know if you guys can't see anything.
Yep, it looks great.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you guys so much. So yeah, my name is Swetha, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Alliance of Angels, for hosting us. But yeah, so today I kind of want to talk about some of the work that we're doing at Brex. For a little bit of context, I joined Brex back in January. So I think that with the rate that our company is growing, I think that makes me one of the more tenured employees on my team. But ever since the company started a couple years ago, we've been pretty big on making data informed but customer driven decisions. And today, basically the goal is to share some of our biggest data related projects from the last couple of months and talk a little bit about some of the customers that we've touched. So just kind of a quick overview of what I'll be talking about today. I'm not sure how many of you guys have actually heard of Brex or know what we're all about. So I'll give a quick rundown of our goals and our major product lines. Then I'll kind of hop into the actual meat of the talk. So my role, I'll talk about my role in particular. It's kind of a unique role at the company. And then I will wrap up talking about some of the data products that are actually coming out of Brex. As Eugen mentioned, feel free to jump in at any time. If you have questions, you can drop them into the Zoom chat. You can interrupt me. I'm happy to answer anything that you guys have. And we also have Simran from the business development team here on the line who can answer some of the other questions that you might have as well. Alrighty. So let's get started with the first thing on today's docket. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what Brex does. So a couple months ago, our leadership team sat down in a room and their goal was to hash out a mission statement. They ruminated with it for a while and then they came up with this, that Brex's mission is to reimagine financial systems so that every growing company can realize their full potential. So that's kind of it's a pretty lofty mission. And I think that some parts of it are super clear right off the bat. And I'm sure people on this call will resonate really well with the second half better than anyone else. Because as an up and coming startup, obviously, like you want the time, you want the resources, you want the money to be able to strive towards all of your own respective missions. But the first part, that section about like reimagining financial systems is a little bit ambiguous. And I kind of thought it would benefit from some explanation. So we can dig into that a little bit, right? So whenever we think about the internet, kind of if we zoom out a little, I feel like it's made almost everything that you could possibly need to run a business more accessible. You know, you have the marketing tools, you have servers that can scale with your company, you have AWS, Google Cloud, you have these corporate email accounts, and really you kind of have everything that you might need except money, right? So the way that I like to think about it is like you have everything that you need to run a business has changed and evolved with you, but the banks, the actual like funding institutions have not grown with our small businesses. And small businesses of the future are kind of just looking more and more like internet enabled startups, right? We don't just have mom and pop restaurants anymore. We have them being able to deliver across the city with DoorDash. And so these small businesses are kind of scaling a little bit and looking more and more like startups, and banks just can't really support that right now. So to allow startups to realize their potential, they need tools and products that kind of empower their internet-enabled pace, their new way of thinking. And I've never really understood why signing up for a credit card or trying to get a bank account set up is like any harder than getting an email, right? Like it should be able to be done fully online in minutes. And before Brex, it wasn't. So at Brex, what we're building is the financial operating system. And it basically is a full stack set of tools for any growing company that needs help managing their finances. And we're integrating services and software that customers might need along the way. And so while our customers are able to build for their, while our customers are working really hard on building for their customers, we are building for them so that they can launch, scale, and ultimately realize their full potential. But of course, fintech is not a particularly simple space. There's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of nuts and bolts that need to be thought up. And you throw in the current economic crisis. And I think the mindset has kind of shifted from VCs focusing on growth numbers to now VCs trying to see if there's a clear pathway to profitability. And we are trying to help startups foster the kind of financial discipline that it would take to be able to actually develop that kind of pathway to profitability. Yeah, is there a question? Okay, awesome, cool. I'll just go ahead and, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. But yeah, of course, a few numbers here. It's obviously like incredibly hard to start a startup. Brex is only 4 years old. So me, other folks at Brex, we're kind of like all in the hustle with you guys. And these numbers aren't meant to be like super fear mongering, but rather to highlight the talent and like to kind of impress upon you like the strengths of founders, because they are able to somehow beat all of these odds. We see like 95% of all products launched this year will fail, or 90% of startups will run out of money before they find product market fit. And we want to basically outline critical steps that your business can take to survive and thrive in this current climate. So what does that exactly mean? What does Brex do? So our first corporate card, you might have seen billboards around New York or the Bay Area, but it is the first corporate card for startups. And it was the first card that, we kind of changed how underwriting is done. So that means that we could deliver 10 to 20 times higher credit limits than our, our traditional like American Express cards. You didn't have to make personal guarantees. And we had super tailored rewards programs that would basically be able to help our companies like extend their runway. On top of that, we had a second product line that we rolled out a couple months ago, and this is called Brex Cash. So Brex Cash is a cash management account, and it basically is faster and easier than dealing with a bank. You get free ACH, free wire transfers, fast payments, and pretty like top of market competitive yield. And these are our two core primitives that we built. And now we have all these other products that we're building on top of it. So actually today we launched instant payouts to sit on top of Brex Cash. We're also building out bill pay, so you can pay all of your bills through Brex. We have spend management in the pipeline to help you manage your spend better and make sure that your employees are spending appropriately so you can have financial discipline. So we have all of these things in the pipeline enabled by some of these core primitives that I'm talking about. And using this suite of products gets you three big buckets of things. And I won't go through all of these bullet points, but kind of at a high level, the first is that you have control over your burn. And that's something that cash and card give you together, because you can create cards, you can manage spend, you can analyze all your transaction data. The second big thing is you are saving money, which means that at the end of the day, you're extending your runway. So firstly, you have higher limits, so you have more to invest in your growth. But then thanks to our rewards program and our points, you have all these credits and discounts that you can redeem on AWS, Zoom, Slack, or any softwares like that. And finally, and maybe this is the most important win with Brex, is that you actually get your time back, because Brex takes a lot of busy work out of the equation, and you kind of never have to go into a physical bank again, because everything is all online. So payments in seconds online, we have integrations in minutes online, you have live customer support that you can access. And it's kind of all of these little things together that kind of add up to massively simplify lives for our founders. And some quick numbers, right? What this means for our customers is that there's nearly 500% ROI over 3 years from our customers when they have a Brex account, which means that they're saving more than $2.5 million, and they're able to close the books way faster. So these are kind of the high level products and offerings that Brex has. And this is kind of what we have strived to deliver to our customers. But in addition to some of these features that I've kind of talked about, we've rolled out what you guys are super interested in, which is our key data-centric features. And these data-centric features have done everything from streamlining operations under the hood to adding more core primitives to the Brex experience, to also kind of cleaning up the user experience so that it's kind of smooth for the customer to understand what's happening. And they just kind of enter Brex and leave their Brex dashboard feeling good about what they are able to see. So yeah, let's just go ahead and hop into the actual meat of the talk right now. So again, I want to talk a little bit about my role. So I joined Brex back in January, like I mentioned. I joined right out of school, and in college I studied a lot of machine learning, and that was something I was super interested in. It was kind of what I did a bunch of research in, took my classes was in deep learning and machine learning. And what I found was that machine learning models, we often had a solid team of data scientists doing solid investigations, doing solid analysis of these models, but then they were kind of lost in the void. And what I wanted to do was make sure that these models are not only productionized and serving customers, but also productized in a way that customers can actually more directly engage with the output of the machine learning models. And so that's kind of what I came to Brex to do, is take machine learning models, train them, but also productionize and productize them. And that was honestly the genesis of, that was the motivation behind the genesis of our new data products team at Brex. It's this really cool team. It was started about 6 months ago, and it combines work streams in data science. We have folks on engineering, and then we have folks on product and user experience. And we try to combine all of these different things that are traditionally siloed or can be siloed. And we want to deliver something for our customers using what we know about them. So the way that this team's structured is it's a super small kind of virtual team. We have 3 folks on it. It's me. I'm the one formal engineer on my team. And I work with 2 other awesome people that originally lived in the data analytics group. And together, as one engineer, 2 folks from data analytics, we are working to build out the projects and products that I'm going to share with you all today. At this point, before I actually hop into anything, I just wanted to pause and see if there's any questions I can answer for you guys, either about Brex or about the structure of the team, why we decided to do it this way. Alrighty, again, feel free to interrupt at any time. I'm just going to go ahead and continue. So yeah, so we have this data products team. It was this new creation we had right when I joined, and we have, since I joined, worked on 3 products as part of this team, and they all touch different parts of the Brex stack. So we have some that, again, are kind of nice to have features on top. We have some that are very core business functionality. So we can start, with the first one I wanted to talk about. And this is, we lovingly call it internally, we call it Auto MCAT, which is our automated merchant categorization system. And we built this to make for a more polished customer experience. So Brex kind of deals in transaction data, right? We have customers that are swiping their cards either in-person, they either making in-person transactions or making transactions online. And we are just collecting this massive data for each customer, right? About where they're spending, who they're spending with, how much they're spending. And it's important for us to be able to, kind of consolidate all of this information and deliver something interesting to them, or actually, like, if not build insights on top of that, at least, cleanly show them what they're spending on. And the reason that we wanted to build a merchant categorization system is honestly for a financial tool. Customers see merchant categorization as a very basic feature. I'm sure many of you have used Mint. It's a personal finance app, and it's super nice. You connect your bank account, and maybe Mint slaps on some like automated merchant categorization algorithm, and it will assign like your McDonald's charge to restaurants or fast food, whatever category they have. The thing about Mint though is that sometimes these automated categories are wrong, but that's totally okay. You can go in, they added a functionality where you can go in and correct them. And you don't like particularly expect or super need Mint's algorithm to be perfect for your $10 McDonald's purchase. It's not that big of a deal, right? But our customers have a little bit of a different experience. Well, because first of all, they're corporations, and second of all, they are, their transactions are a little bit larger than that sometimes. So what we found from talking to our customers is they were actually using merchant categories to do ad hoc sanity checks on their spend, which means if they saw, so let's say that someone at their company went into, used their Brex card and made a $2,000 purchase for a bunch of Google ads. But then they go onto their Brex dashboard and they see a $2,000 transaction, but it's actually in the restaurant category. So when that happens, the customer immediately thinks that the transaction is fraudulent. So kind of early on in the life of our merchant categorization system, what we started seeing was a massive influx of fraud tickets. And that wasn't something that we had really expected. So our support team was being overwhelmed by these fraud tickets because of these miscategorized merchants. So while merchant cat at a high level, it seems like, kind of like a fun, nice to have feature, our customer usage actually showed us that it was more, and it was actually like a way for people to monitor and screen their spend. And so that's why we prioritized improving the system here at Brex. So how did we go ahead and do that? So at Brex, our MCAT system, merchant categorization system, breaks down the problem into two smaller subtasks. So first, we have to identify the merchant, and only then can we actually do the second step, which is categorizing it. So identifying the merchant is a very interesting problem, actually, because what people don't know is that when you swipe your card at McDonald's or at a gas station or whatever, we don't get a clean merchant name from the network. We don't get a nice string that says McDonald's or, some gas station name. We actually get sometimes garbled metadata. So you can look at this example here. This was an actual transaction I made. I went to a bookstore back in February and I got my book. It was like $20 or something. I inserted my Brex card into a Square chip reader. That's what the bookstore had. And I check out my dashboard afterwards, and this is what I see. It's like this SQU star Booksmith -IN, right? And maybe I can look at this and parse, okay, book, like it's a bookstore or something like that. But, for other merchants and, for other use cases, we kind of get these sometimes hard to read strings, and they're a little bit garbled. And that's what Brex gets post-transaction. So actually identifying the merchant in and of itself is a pretty difficult task. So kind of keep this in mind, keep what the string looks like in mind. And we, at the very beginning of Brex, we were getting a bunch of these transactions coming in, and they looked like that, right? They looked like these garbled strings. And what we did, our solution to this at the time was our CFO was going to sit down, and at the end of his day, every day, he would sit and he would actually tag these incoming transactions. So he himself would go in and say, okay, SQU star SQ is Booksmith, which is a bookstore in California. And eventually, obviously, you can imagine that a process like that with our friendly CFO doesn't really scale as we start getting more and more transactions coming in. And so our immediate solution was, okay, let's just outsource this. Let's outsource it and let's leave it alone. So we set up tasks with Amazon Mechanical Turk. So we had Mechanical Turk workers helping us do a lot of this tagging. And for some really difficult merchants, we would send them over to our support team. So about 25% of all merchant volume was getting sent to our support team. So this is kind of what volume looked like. So this is volume plus cost. So on a quarterly basis, at the end of Q2 this year, so the end of like about June, right? June, July, we had consumed in Q2 about 2 million transactions that were touched by this system. Of these 2 million transactions, we saw 50,000 unique merchants that were purchased, that our customers made transactions at. And by the time we had sent all of these tasks to Mechanical Turk and paid them and sent all these tasks to our support team, it ended up coming out to about $49,000 in 1 quarter to operate this completely manual automated merchant CAT system, which obviously is not, that's a very, very high number. And for one small feature on our dashboard, we didn't want to be spending that much money. So obviously expensive, this system was so expensive. And this number, this $49,000 is for 1 quarter, not accounting for growth. So as Brex grows, as we see more and more transactions coming in through our system, we kind of projected that number would increase $7,000 quarter over quarter, accounting for that growth. It's also, like I mentioned, a super manual process. So between the time I actually swiped my card at the bookstore and saw that SQ thing, and by the time it got cleaned up into something else, it would take almost 2 weeks. So I couldn't actually go through and screen and validate my transactions on my dashboard for 2 weeks because it was so manual. And of course, the final thing is, because we're outsourcing it, because there is possible for human error there, the results were sometimes too generic or sometimes incorrect. So sometimes what we would see is for an SQ Booksmith merchant, it would actually just come out to square. Now the merchant isn't square, the merchant was Booksmith. So the result there was a little bit too generic, and it's kind of, makes for a really poor customer experience. And so we kind of approached this problem after seeing this huge volume of fraud tickets, getting complaints about this. We were in the middle of redesigning our dashboard, and we said, okay, what can we do about this? How do we solve this problem? And immediately the first thing was, we have historical data. We know where people are spending these money, we know where people are spending this money. We know the true names of merchants, given their garbled names. Can we do something with that? And so we decided to build an automated pipeline for this. Again, there are kind of 2 steps to this, right? So we have the identification piece and we have the categorization piece. So identification looks like, this is kind of what the workflow looks like, right? So you go to Blue Bottle Coffee in this case. Another team built out this awesome receipt matching functionality. So you snap a picture and your receipt gets automatically uploaded, matched to the Blue Bottle transaction. So that's all awesome. And then, okay, you're like, okay, how do we identify this merchant? We have the garbled name. And the first thing that we did was we said, okay, let's just go ahead and send this garbled name to Google Places and see what it gives us, right? So, let's go ahead and send it over to Google Places. And if we're lucky, we will get back a name, we will get back a website, and we will get back a list of categories that Google thinks that might fall under. So for Blue Bottle, you might see Blue Bottle Coffee, you might see the website bluebottlecoffee.com, and then you might see restaurant, fast food, coffee, merchandise as a list of possible category candidates. In the case where Google Places isn't able to help us out, we scrap that and we say, okay, let's just default to Mechanical Turk so we can get a clean name and a clean website when there is no Google result. And basically at the end of the day, at the end of this identification step, we get a name, we get a website, and we get our Google categories if we're lucky. And a couple of very interesting things here that we found. So with the name and the website and the Google categories, we wanted to do an analysis to see, okay, how can we use this information in downstream? How can we use it for any actual categorization of these merchants that we want to do. So what we did was, based on an analysis, we found that Google categories are super useful when the merchant has a physical location, and they actually map pretty well to our Brex internal categories. So if we take a look at this plot right here, we see things like restaurants and lodging and even florists, things that actually have like on the ground locations, tend to be like really strongly correlated with our Brex categories that also are similar, like restaurants, lodging, or in general merchandise. But things that don't have physical locations, things like SaaS or non-recurring software or advertising tech, those don't necessarily, those types of merchants don't necessarily have clean Google categories that come back to us, so we can't always use them. So that's one type of output that we get at the identification step. And the second type are these merchant names, right? And merchant names are actually super indicative of category if you think about it. In Blue Bottle Coffee, what do we have? We have the word coffee, right? And that is a really strong indicator of what category it might be. So if we kind of look at these, word clouds for each category that we care about, the top left here is our restaurant category. So you see words that you might expect. You see coffee, pizza, cafe, restaurant. This is the word cloud of the merchant name. So the actual merchant name will say restaurant, or the merchant name will say pizza. And that's super helpful for us. On the top right here, we have our advertising and marketing category. So you see graphic, media, sign, design, marketing. So again, a lot of useful information there. But it's not always useful, again, to look at the merchant name. So these two examples down here, right, on the bottom left and the bottom right, the bottom left is our non-recurring software, and the bottom right is our recurring software. And there's not that much separation between what these two word clouds say. And so distinguishing between these two categories purely based on merchant name wouldn't be super possible here, because honestly, they both just say software in them. And so what we wanted to do here was take the merchant name, transform it, take the Google categories, transform them, and then train a model, train an automated classifier on those two types of data, in addition to some of that garbled metadata that we talked about, to basically spit out one of about 40 Brex categories. So what this kind of looked like, to dig a little bit into the details, is we tuned a pre-trained deep neural network to produce lower dimensional representations of the merchant name and the Google category. And then we trained a basic regression model to take these lower dimensional representations and then spit out one of these 40 categories. And with that, we were able to get a classifier that has about 85% accuracy. So this is huge, going from a system that was almost completely manual to now being able to have about an 85% success rate for this model. And on top of that, to fill that 85 to 100, that 15% gap right there, we have a QA process to make sure that that number is staying high. And we also have our support team, to help us out to make sure that the system is working as we expect. So we rolled this out, and it was super exciting. This is what, the results came in, and we saw a 95% drop in the merchants being sent to support. What that means is now support can focus on real fraud, or they can focus on other tickets. They can focus on getting back to our customers within a couple minutes. We saw a 98% drop in merchants being sent to Mechanical Turk. And what that adds up to is 70% cost reduction in 1 quarter. So just by automating this small piece of the puzzle, we were able to save tens of thousands of dollars, as well as save time for our internal teams. And so if you actually look at what this looks like on the dashboard, it looks something like this. So we have all of my transactions right here on the left, and on this middle column, this category column, is the output of our automated merchant categorization system. So now you can scan, you can kind of do a sanity check and say, okay, Safeway is definitely grocery, cannery marketing is definitely ads and marketing. It all checks out, it all makes sense, and it all looks good to the customer. And the lesson here is that sometimes for us, it was worth taking a second look at these legacy projects to actually see, okay, we've collected all this data for this customer over time. We haven't used it. Can we pause on the system a little bit and see if there's a way to actually make use of this data for a legacy project and actually cut costs and improve user experience downstream? So that was one project that we worked on, as one of the big ones, automated merchant categorization. Before I hop into any of the other projects, any questions here that I can answer for you guys at this point? I can give more technical details. I can talk a little bit more about the user experience, questions that we got from the customer, things like that. Alrighty, if not, I will just go ahead and jump into the second thing I wanted to talk about. Cool. So the next project is a really big one. This is going to kind of be a sneak peek for what we're working on. And this is spend insights. So at this point, like I mentioned, we have built out our core primitives, right? We have our card, we have our cash, and thanks to my team, we also have this wonderful list of categories for all of your transactions. But there's still a layer that's missing, right? There's an analytics layer. How can we allow our customers to action on the data that they're seeing? And that's kind of what Spend Insights is all about. Our goal is to provide them with insights about their spending patterns so that they can basically, they're incentivized to spend more on Brex, to connect their bank accounts, and they basically are able to get more from the Brex ecosystem, which helps them, and it of course helps us. Cool. So let's zoom out a little bit, right? So again, we have core primitives, card, cash, we have instant payouts, bill pay, all this good stuff. But the guiding principle for spend management is that we want it to be effortless for companies to not only access capital, but also use it responsibly. And obviously, like in an ideal world, companies would be able to trust their employees to spend appropriately, but that doesn't always pan out. And you kind of need this lightweight level of control in order for all of your employees and for your company's spend to be financially responsible. And with our core primitives, Brex has made it super easy to give every employee their own card with a monthly limit and all that good stuff. And that is very flexible for the employee, but obviously the head of finance, that's a big no-no, right? If every employee is kind of going and spending however they want and there's no review, there's no approval, that is kind of not going to fly as the company grows and capital becomes more and more valuable. And traditionally, what review and approval looks like, I'm sure all of us have been through this, is you go on a trip, you collect all your receipts from your your $10 McDonald's purchase, you keep them for your week-long trip, and then you upload them somewhere. You get an expense report at the end of it. You submit that to someone wastes their time reviewing it, and at the end of the day, they just approve all the transactions anyway. It's kind of just a waste of time for everyone, right? And so Brex was like, okay, we need to come up with a better solution. How do we do that? So obviously the first thing that we did was we interviewed 6 customers and we said, okay, in this situation, what can we do? What insights can we give you that would make it easier to manage your spend, would make it easier so that you don't have to go through all of these transactions? And the one takeaway from our customer conversations was that they said that the insights that were most valuable and actionable are anomaly notifications. We're not going to sit and interact with our merchant category visualization every day. We're not going to interact with our spend breakdown every single day. But in real time, they want to know what is weird, what is different here. And instead of asking the approver, the head of finance, or the manager to sit and review every single transaction, now they can just look at the transactions that are kind of out of the ordinary. So everything else is implicitly improved and their attention is kind of focused in on a group of transactions that are a little bit weird. So the idea behind this project is we can build a model that highlights these weird transactions, and then those transactions are flagged on the customer dashboard as an alert. And these alerts can then be actioned on. So you can follow up, you can ignore it, you can check out related transactions and all that good stuff. So this was kind of our Spend Insights project. This is what we wanted to build. I'll go into a little bit of detail of what specific models we were interested in working on. So obviously, these are alerts, right? When you think of an alert on your phone, you get 400 notifications from every app. After a while, it's diminishing returns. You delete the app because you don't want it, or you turn off the notifications, and it can be really noisy. And we didn't want that kind of experience on the Brex dashboard. So we worked backwards here, right? We did an analysis of spend for all of our customers at different thresholds, which is basically like, so, okay, so zooming out a little. So the goal here was to build a spend increase model. So whenever someone is spending X dollars at a particular merchant every month, and then all of a sudden 1 month they spend 5X or 10X, we want to flag that, because that's a massive spend increase for that card user or that department or that merchant or that category. So what we did was we said, okay, what is a good threshold? We wanted to figure out a good threshold for identifying these spend increases. So we did an analysis of, our customer spend at different spend increase thresholds, and then back computed how many expected number of alerts each customer would get. And after deciding that we wanted to limit the number of expected alerts per month to about 2 for spend increases, we were able to select a threshold for a card user, for a department, for a merchant, for a category. And then we basically were able to come up with a pretty simplistic yet super useful set of rules to detect these spend increases. The second type of anomaly we were interested in here was the duplicate recurring spend. Now, this is kind of huge, right? It bakes one insight into another, because first you have to detect what spend is considered recurring spend, right? So recurring spend is like, okay, every month you have like AWS day, which is when you pay down your AWS bill. And it's about the same, maybe like a little bit of growth, like month over month, but more or less you paid at the end of the month. It's like pretty consistent amount. And we want to be able to flag that and detect that, right? So to do this, we looked back 6 months for each merchant, and we looked at transaction trends. So we looked at things like the amount, the time of the year that the purchase was made. So is it made like every month, or is it made at the beginning of every quarter? And then we also looked at the time of the month that the purchase was made. Is it made like January 1st, February 1st, March 1st, or is it made January 31st, February, 27th, and so on and so forth? Is it made at the end of the month? And that kind of information kind of helped us build a recurring spend profile. We had to exclude some noisy merchants, things like Uber and Amazon, which show up a lot, but aren't technically recurring. And then, we built this recurring spend profile. And recurring spend is super interesting because a lot of spend on people's Brex cards is recurring spend. So to actually understand how customers are using Brex, it was critical for us to be able to actually identify these recurring transactions. And once we have the recurring transactions, the next step is to track the list of subscribers. So if we have multiple people paying for LinkedIn, or we have multiple people paying for Google ads, or the AWS bill, or Superhuman, or whatever it is, we want to be able to track that complete list of people. And then if there are multiple subscribers for one such subscription service, then consider it duplicate spend, and we put up a notice for these customers. So these are the 2 anomalies that we are working on flagging. We are actually rolling this out internally today, and this will be available to customers going forward, hopefully by the end of Q4. So this is something to look forward to. This is what our latest build of spend insights look like. So we have this section here of transactions that look a little unusual. You can click into them, and then you'll be able to see what is weird about it. So here we see, this is one of the spend increases that we see. You can follow up, you can ignore, you can view all the transactions that you care about. So this kind of feature is something that was first built on customer feedback, and then uses spend trends for each customer. So it's very personalized and very tailored to each customer experience. So that was project number 2 that we worked on, and it's something that is in progress, and it's something that we're super excited about kind of wrapping up as the quarter finishes up. I'll pause again for any other questions. I've been talking a lot. If anybody has questions about this at all, like feel free to stop me. If not, you can also drop them in the chat. But in the meanwhile, I want to quickly go through our very last.
Swetha, it looks like there are a couple of messages in the chat window. Are you able to see them?
Let me see. I can't. Let's see.
So the first question is from YH An.
Okay.
Question: how do you set the priority on which projects you would focus on?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I kind of touched on this, but the idea is that it's very customer driven. Whenever we work on these data products, we have our UX research team, they're in the loop. We have our product team in the loop. And I actually had a chance to facilitate some customer calls where we kind of hacked together some prototype features in a week, and then we showed them to customers and we said, do you care about this at all? Do you care about this relative to other things that we're building? Is this something that we should invest time in? And so it's completely customer directed here. And we relied very heavily on customer interviews and surveys that we had sent out to be able to kind of build out these features. So that is how we prioritized. Yeah, so it's either when a customer complains, it's really high priority, or when a customer requests something, it becomes high priority for us.
Okay, thanks. And there's a second question from Chris P. It's about data privacy regulations. Are there any data privacy regulations to comply with?
So in terms of like internal access, or can you like add some color to that? Internal access, or in terms of who can see your data within Brex, or what specifically?
So there's not any more detail to the question. Maybe Chris would type up again, but based on what you just said, maybe it's about, you were talking about like analyzing data in the last projects. And, did you need, is that PII? Is that perhaps anything that's that the customer get uneasy about? Like we start sending alerts based on behaviors. Right.
Yeah. That's a really good question. And it's something that we are extremely mindful of, because obviously as a fintech company, we are handling very, very sensitive data. So I'll start internally and then work up, right? So internally, we have built out a very comprehensive role-based access control for all of customer data. So people cannot access your data across the company unless they have very specific permissions to do so. We also, all customers know when they sign up for Brex, they link their bank account or they send us bank statements in at a recurring cadence. So they know what information that they know what information they're giving us. And it's something that we make them aware of when we have regular like quarterly business reviews with them, or they're in touch with their support team. So internally, it's like access is very tightly regulated. You have to go through our trust and security teams to request access to any of this data. In terms of customer usage, this is not broadly available. So these features are not things that any employee in a big like 500-person company can access, right? This is specifically like administrators being able to dig into corporate spend. So this is like people that are either on the accounting team or the head of finance. Those are the people that would be able to actually see this kind of these anomalies that are being surfaced and things like that. But otherwise, this is not broadly available to like employees. And yeah, so in terms of like external access, that is pretty tightly regulated. Yeah, I guess that's so. I mean, this is basically like we are surfacing like customer data back to them in a way that is useful. So we are taking data that they are giving us and slicing it in interesting ways so that they can find value in it. But we do try to make sure that internally and externally, we're like tightly regulating access here. And so that's something that's a priority for us. And that's something that our like security and trust teams are working closely with data products to make that happen as well.
So there's another question from Micah Flumian. Can you sort by value or customer at the company spend level, so you can prioritize review time and not have to look at each employee account?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of the question?
Sure. Can you sort by value or customer at the company spend level, so you can prioritize review time and not have to look at each employee account?
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're saying for all the, if my company has 10 people in it and they all have cards, can we prioritize by, card holder so that we can like screen in that order of priority? That's a really good suggestion. I'll take that back to the team. It's not something that we've thought about right now. Right now, the prioritization is in chronological order. But yeah, we can definitely do that. We can look at like, okay, what customers and what card users have, the highest credit limits, or what card users, are maybe spending the most. have the highest usage or spending most frequently, and then prioritize like that so that we can cut time for a review. That's a really good suggestion. But no, we don't do that right now though.
All right, thank you. Those are all the questions so far.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, sorry I can't seem to find those anywhere, but thank you for reading them to me. Cool. So the last project I want to touch on in the last few minutes we have is this one that it was the first project I worked on at Brex actually, and it kind of supports the core business, which is how do we get a credit limit to a customer? Traditionally, like how this works, I mentioned that we actually have customers send us their bank statements or, set up a live connection with their bank accounts. But what we found was there's actually like a large chunk of customers that are unable to set up these live connections with their bank accounts. And the reason that we need bank transaction data is to understand either like, okay, what's your revenue? What is your balance? Can we build balance forecast models on top of what we're seeing? Are you having any overdrafts? We just need kind of metrics like that to be able to assess risk on our end. And because there's such a huge volume of customers that can't actually have a live connection with their bank account, they need to send in these PDF statements every month. So we manually outreach to them. We have them upload statements to us. We download their statements. We have a whole underwriting operations team that takes these statements, looks through them, makes sure that they're all kosher, and then they get manually underwritten. And this comes out to about 20% of our customers have to go through this flow, which means that in order for them to actually have a more refreshed limit or get a stable limit, or maybe, get their limit back if they were zeroed, they have to go through this entire process of manually uploading, waiting for the operations team to review. It's just super burdensome on both us internally as well as the customer. So basically, in order to deliver fast onboarding, stable limits, and also, reduce our cost to serve for these customers, basically, we needed to figure out a way to cut the manual process down for these bank statements. And this is a project that I worked on to basically incorporate OCR, which is optical character recognition, to automatically parse these bank statements, pull out all the balances, and pull out all of the transactions here. This way, our operations team doesn't have to spend hours going through dozens of bank statements and extracting this information. And like kind of the big lesson here was that we had to think of two customers, right? We were building this out not just for our external customers, but also for our internal customers, people that rely heavily on Brex's internal tooling. So when we were able to build out some rigorous metrics for operational efficiency and identify bottlenecks and then optimize on these bottlenecks, we were able to scale our internal processes. And that ultimately means that the customer experience is elevated a little. So to solve this problem, we integrated with a third-party OCR vendor that is able to parse these bank statements for us and pass us back the balances, the transactions that we care about. And ultimately, this has touched about 20% of our startup portfolio, which means that, again, like I mentioned, they are able to have these faster onboarding times because we were able to automate with OCR, and they were able to have a bit more stable limits. So that kind of helps everyone out at the end of the day. A little discussion of more specific impacts here is now we have customers that are able to be moved to automated underwriting, which means that now they can take advantage of our underwriting machine learning model. So our balance forecast model, our revenue forecast model, like we have all of these models that we use to actually generate a limit. And now these customers are able to benefit from the outputs of these models. We were also able to do more robust statement fraud detection. We were able to minimize risk by looking at overdrafts and late fees that show up in the transactions and things like that. And now that we have like this OCR power, we are able to pull non-Brex transactions, right? So if they do have an American Express card and they are sending us the bank statement with that data on it, we can maybe build merchant categorization on top of that or build spend insights on top of that. So basically our customer can walk into the Brex dashboard and get a complete view of all of their spend, whether it's on the Brex card or not. So they're incentivized to connect their bank accounts, and they're incentivized to make sure that they are regularly engaging with Brex to give us the latest and the greatest information that they have. But also we have the opportunity to take this information and transform this data into actionable insights and interesting features for the customer to use at the end of the day. So that is kind of the third and final project I wanted to talk about. So again, we went through like our automated merchant categorization system. We have our key spend insights that are in the process of being rolled out right now. And then finally, we have this OCR-based automated bank statement processing. And so all of these data products kind of come together to improve our customer experience, reduce our cost to serve, and also kind of just give us, kind of make our competitive moat a little bit larger, because we have offerings that our competitors just don't have right now. And so those are some things that I'm kind of excited about that we have been working on. But otherwise, thank you all for listening so much. And I still can't see the questions tab. Oh, I can see it now. If there's any more questions, let me take a look. Okay, I don't see any more questions on here, but feel free to hop in right now if anyone has any questions. I'm happy to take them. Cool. I don't see any more. Eugene, do you want to go ahead and take it from here?
Yep, sure thing. And before we move on, I'd like to ask Simran if she has any comments, anything she wants to talk about. Say, for example, I know Brex recently did a big rebranding, right, exercise, and maybe a little bit about how that's gone and what the new brand represents for the company.
Hi. Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the rebrand. So as Swetha mentioned in her presentation, we are really hoping to be the financial OS with the entire technology stack that we have. And an interesting story about the brand that I really resonated with that our founder spoke to is that, as you'll notice with the new logo, it actually looks like a flag. And the reason behind that is with, conquering any big thing, for example, the Mars landing, I'm sorry, the moon landing, we had the flag. So it's supposed to be a symbol of almost conquering this new financial OS system. And then also to step in like a little bit further, we have a great partnership with Alliance of Angels. So, if you found this webinar to be of value, we'd love to have you on Brex. And we have a personalized landing page. So it's just brex.com/Alliance of Angels. And if you sign up through there, you get special partner perks. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you. So thanks very much, Simran, and also Swetha for your time today, sharing all these details on your internal projects and the insights that you arrived at. Thank you so much for your time. And we very much appreciate your support and your partnership and the help that you provided to the Pacific Northwest startup community. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. It was awesome to meet everyone.
Thanks. All right, everyone have a great week. Thank you.